The sign appears. The world woke up to a sky that was no longer familiar. It was a crisp autumn morning, and the sun should have been rising, painting the horizon with hues of orange and pink. But instead, the sky was dominated by a massive, dark sign, a symbol that no one could decipher. It was etched across the heavens like a scar, visible from every corner of the globe. The sign was a swirling, intricate pattern of black and deep crimson, pulsating faintly as if alive. It didn't move, didn't fade, and didn't respond to the frantic attempts of scientists, governments, or amateur astronomers to explain its origin. In New York City, Dr. Evelyn Carter, an astrophysicist, stood on the rooftop of her apartment building, her telescope abandoned at her side. She had been up all night trying to make sense of the sign. It defied every law of physics she knew. It wasn't a cloud, nor was it a celestial body. It didn't emit light or heat, yet it was visible even in the brightest daylight. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages from colleagues, news outlets, and worried friends, but she ignored them. Her mind raced with possibilities, none of them comforting. Meanwhile, in a small village in Kenya, a young farmer named Kioni stared at the sky, her heart pounding. The elders had gathered in the center of the village, chanting and praying. They believed the sign was a warning from the gods, a harbinger of doom. Kioni, who had always been skeptical of such beliefs, couldn't shake the feeling that they might be right. The air felt heavier, the birds had stopped singing, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. In Moscow, a hacker known only as Specter watched the sign through his window, his fingers flying across his keyboard. He had spent the last few hours trying to access classified government files, searching for any hint of what the sign might mean. What he found was unsettling. Every major government had been tracking the sign's appearance for weeks, but no one had warned the public. There were encrypted messages, redacted reports, and a single phrase that kept appearing, Project Eclipse. Specter didn't know what it meant, but he was determined to find out. As the day wore on, the world descended into chaos. Social media was flooded with theories, aliens, divine intervention, a government conspiracy. Religious leaders declared it the end times, while scientists scrambled to provide rational explanations. But no one could deny the unease that settled over the planet like a suffocating blanket. So whispers. The whispers began subtly, like the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. At first, people dismissed them as their imagination, a side effect of the collective anxiety gripping the world. She tried to ignore them, to focus on her work, but the whispers followed her everywhere. They were in her dreams, in the rustling of the trees, even in the sound of her own heartbeat. Together, they would uncover the truth about the sign and the forces behind it. But as they delved deeper into the mystery, they realized that the sign wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. And if they didn't act quickly, it would be too late. So the disappearances. The disappearances began in earnest a week after the sign appeared. At first, they were isolated incidents, a missing person here, an abandoned car there. But soon, entire communities vanished without a trace. In a small town in Germany, every resident disappeared overnight, leaving behind half-eaten meals and still-burning candles. In a remote village in Peru, the only sign of life was a single, terrified child who spoke of shadows that moved on their own. Evelyn, Kioni, and Specter worked tirelessly to piece together the puzzle. Evelyn's research led her to a startling discovery. The disappearances were linked to the sign's energy. The symbol emitted a frequency that affected the human brain, causing hallucinations, paranoia, and, in some cases, complete mental breakdowns. Those who disappeared had all been exposed to the sign for extended periods, their minds overwhelmed by its influence. Kioni's connection to the whispers gave her a unique perspective. She realized that the voices weren't random. They were messages, fragments of a larger communication. The sign was trying to tell them something, but its language was beyond human understanding. Kioni began to document the whispers, searching for patterns or clues. What she found was chilling. The voices were counting down. Specter, meanwhile, focused on the consortium and the veil. He discovered that both groups had been aware of the sign's potential for years. The consortium believed it could be used to control the population, while the Veil saw it as a threat to humanity's survival. Both groups were willing to do whatever it took to achieve their goals, even if it meant sacrificing innocent lives. As the trio delved deeper, they realized that they were being watched. The temple was massive, its stone walls covered in intricate carvings that depicted the sign in various forms throughout history. Evelyn recognized the patterns from her research. This was the source of the sign, the place where it had first been created. As they entered the temple, they were met with a sight that took their breath away. At the center of the temple was a massive, pulsating orb of energy, its surface swirling with the same dark and crimson patterns as the sign in the sky. The orb emitted a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through their very bones. Surrounding the orb were dozens of figures, their bodies encased in a strange, crystalline substance. Evelyn realized with a start that these were the missing people, the ones who had been taken by the sign. Their faces were frozen in expressions of terror, their eyes wide and unseeing. Specter, ever the pragmatist, immediately began scanning the area with his equipment. "The energy readings are off the charts," he said, his voice tense. "If we don't shut this thing down, it's going to consume everything." Kioni, meanwhile, felt a strange pull toward the orb. The whispers in her mind grew louder, more insistent. They were no longer fragmented messages but a coherent voice, deep and resonant, speaking directly to her. Voss argued that the sign's power could be used to create a utopia, a world free from war and suffering. Marcus Kane countered that the sign's power was too dangerous, too unpredictable, and that its destruction was the only way to ensure humanity's survival. Evelyn, however, had a different perspective. "This isn't about control or destruction," she said. "This is about understanding. The sign is a test and we're failing it. If we want to survive, we need to prove that we're capable of more than just fear and greed." Her words seemed to resonate with both sides, but the fragile truce didn't last long. As the consortium and the Veil began to argue, the orb's energy surged, sending a shockwave through the temple. The crystalline figures surrounding the orb began to crack and shatter, their bodies disintegrating into dust. The whispers in Kioni's mind reached a fever pitch, the voice now screaming in her ears. "The time has come. Choose wisely, or all will be lost." In the chaos, Evelyn, Kioni, and Specter made their move. Using a device Specter had cobbled together from his equipment, they attempted to neutralize the orb's energy. The process was fraught with danger, and the temple began to collapse around them as the orb's power destabilized. The consortium and the Veil, realizing the gravity of the situation, put aside their differences and worked together to help. As the device activated, the orb's energy began to dissipate, the dark and crimson patterns fading into nothingness. The sign in the sky vanished, and the whispers in Kioni's mind fell silent. But as the dust settled, Evelyn, Kioni, and Specter realized that the experiment was not over. The ancient civilization that had created the sign was still out there, watching and waiting, and humanity's true test was just beginning. Aftermath. The disappearance of the sign brought a fragile sense of relief to the world, but the scars it left behind were deep and lasting. The missing people were gone, their fates unknown, and the whispers that had haunted so many were replaced by an eerie silence. Governments scrambled to restore order, but the collective trauma of the sign's appearance was not easily forgotten. Evelyn, Kioni, and Specter returned to their lives, but they were forever changed by what they had experienced. Evelyn continued her work as an astrophysicist, but her focus shifted to the study of ancient civilizations and their connection to the cosmos. She became a vocal advocate for global cooperation, arguing that humanity's survival depended on its ability to work together. Kioni returned to her village in Kenya, where she used her newfound understanding of the whispers to help her community heal. She became a spiritual leader of sorts, guiding others through the trauma of the sign's appearance and helping them find meaning in the chaos. Specter, ever the enigma, disappeared into the shadows once more. But he left behind a message for Evelyn and Kioni. The experiment is not over. Stay vigilant. As the years passed, the world began to rebuild, but the memory of the sign lingered like a shadow. Strange phenomena began to occur, subtle at first but growing more frequent. People reported seeing glimpses of the sign in their dreams, and whispers began to creep back into the minds of those who had been affected. Evelyn, Kioni, and Specter knew that the ancient civilization was still watching, still testing humanity. The sign had been a warning, a reminder of the darkness that lurked within the human heart. But it had also been an opportunity, a chance for humanity to prove that it was capable of more than just fear and greed. As they looked up at the now clear sky, Evelyn, Kioni, and Specter knew that their journey was far from over. The dark sign in the sky was gone, but the shadows it left behind would linger for generations. And the question remained, would humanity learn from its mistakes, or would it repeat them?